good evening, and welcome to the Artists Forum. I am your guest host, Craig Roseberry, and tonight we are doing a very special panel on the life, the legacy, and the beauty of Frankie Knuckles. And I am very, very excited about doing this. And we have a lovely panel of some of my closest friends, and they are industry professionals and also colleagues and friends of Frankie's as well. We have Jon Martin, who is cultural engineer, DJ, and event producer. Next to him, we have the lovely Jeannie Hopper. She's a DJ, radio personality, of course, Liquid Sound Lounge, WBAI, Clock Tower Radio. And next to her, we have Joe Berinato. He is a label manager, artist manager, and record promoter. And of course, last but not least, we have the legendary Rob Di Stefano, who is the owner of Tribal and Twisted Records.
Great to be here.
So thank you all for joining me tonight. It's great to have you all. So why don't we get started? One of the things I'd want to talk about when we talk about sort of Frankie Knuckles is what I think is most important is his legacy and his achievements that he made throughout his life and how they impact not only the world that we come out of from being, club promoters and club people and dance music, industry professionals and things, but also how it affects sort of the climate, the musical climate today, and the whole round of new artists who are kind of doing dance music in a very big way now, as outside of just EDM. So one of the things I want to talk about first is, what were some of your first experiences with Frankie Knuckles, and how did you first sort of encounter his music or him personally, and what did that mean to you? So I'll start with you, Jon.
Okay, well, I encountered Frankie's music when I was still in high school. It's really the birth of house. A lot of records that were coming out of Chicago on DJ International and tracks were affiliated or produced by Frankie. And so I first encountered his name and his music then. And then as I got a little bit older, I was lucky enough to go to clubs like Sound Factory and The World, where he had his early New York City residencies, or at least early for me. And so I got a chance to meet him and become friends with him, and work with him on his website, and just really have a wonderful 20-year friendship and working relationship with him.
Yeah, I think what's important is that, Frankie was born here. He's from New York and grew up with his best friend, which was Larry Levan. And they kind of, I guess, really what introduces them into sort of the club world in the first place is really their experiences going to the Loft.
Correct.
And with David Mancuso. And then from that point, so, it's fascinating because we have these two friends who then eventually each become seminal pioneers in sort of the development and growth of what becomes house music and club culture. So we have, obviously we have Larry with Paradise Garage, and then we have Frankie leaving New York, going to Chicago, and then next thing you know, he's at Warehouse and
Power Plant.
That's right. I want to say it wrong. Yes, and so I'm now going to move it on to you, Jeannie. So what are some of your experiences with
For me, what was
Frankie?
interesting is I didn't come up in the scene so much here, in the sense of, I came to go to college in around 87, 88. So I was just kind of a baby in the club scene, you could say, trying to find where to go.
Right.
And later on, as a journalist, then having to go backwards and explore, where was I going? What was I listening to? Who were these people? So it wasn't even awareness in the beginning outside
Oh, it's
of...
actually really fascinating.
Yeah,
As long as I've known you, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I went to the World, had a great time. I stumbled into the Loft, not even knowing where I was, because I was trying to get in Save the Robots, and they were like, no, the police right now. So, there was moments you entered and you don't, and they were like, go around the corner. And then experiencing at the Loft, people, someone's bed in the middle of the room, and a dance floor over there, and all of a sudden the record ended.
It was very organic, wasn't it? It was very
and the record ending and people applauding, but that experience of the record stopping. And at first, me and my friends were like, what? But then we got into the whole spirit of it, and it was being able to hear the music in such a special way. But back to Frankie, then it was finding Sound Factory Bar, finding Sound Factory, which was not easy as a female to enter.
Yes.
And I remember the security guards even saying to us, because they would be like, no, no, no. And then we'd go underneath what's now the High Line. And, and then finally one security guy, after 3 weeks of us trying to get in, came over and said, listen, ladies, you just got to go up to one of the guys before they come down the street and just ask them if you can come in with them. And we're like, okay, okay. But so those are my experiences. But then afterwards, researching when I had my radio show, even before the radio show, you know, then picking up mixed cassettes from record stores. Kind of a similar thing, like even in the hip-hop scene. It's like that's how you got to start to explore the music. And the record store really became my hub of learning about where this music was from, where these artists were from. I didn't have a lot of money to buy records. So for me, it was the experience of the radio or coming up in the roller skating rink with a DJ in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So it was kind of this other evolution of, I guess, being naturally a patron of the clubs and then researching back and being lucky enough to get to know Frankie because I started an industry job at 8 Ball Records around the time that I started my radio show on WBAI in 1993, which still is on Saturday nights, 7 to 10. And I really made the show, which WBAI is about, a place to culturally learn about what the scene is, not just what I call the commercial side of dance music on the radio, which was the mix show, which I enjoyed as well. But I really brought that journalistic side of myself into it, and I was like, I'm going to let people know who are all these great people behind the scenes.
Exactly.
That we don't know, and what feeds that wonderful experience that we have. And Frankie, absolutely, you know, at the core, is one of those great people. And when I rose up as a DJ and became a touring DJ and was in the industry again through 8 Ball Records, I got to know Frankie. And he was one of the most humble, nice, just down-to-earth people. And I started to learn very fast that the people that were most successful, that had really staying power, I would say 99% of them really were genuine and down-to-earth in what they do and their craft. And that shows in their music.
No, that's true. You know? And you know, I know for you, Joe, obviously, you know, you worked with Frankie very much, so, and then also being a New Yorker, so I'm sure that your experiences are, in your memories, they go deep.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. I mean, my sister was the person that got me into dance music because she was a bit of a disco queen in the 70s. But Frankie was the one to get me into house music because when I, you know, after the post-disco and kind of exploring into like various, you know, phases of electronic sounds, be they like the darker electronic, you know, industrial goth maybe stuff, or, you know.
Well, obviously from our goth new wave days together, yes, we did that.
Yes, we did
that's
that.
Okay.
And,
we did that, yes.
But then the first time I heard Where Love Lives, it just completely blew me away.
You lived.
And that's what I lived. That's where love lives.
Exactly.
And yeah, and that's what started my love affair with house music. And sure enough, his name was on the record. And when I was at working at Billboard doing the dance chart, we went out to lunch with Bobby Shaw, and you know, Frankie was there. I said, Bobby, I really want to meet Frankie. And we went to lunch, and we started talking about, you know, records and stuff. And he's like, you're not trying to work a record to me, are you? I was like, no, I'm not trying to work a record. Like he would call you on it, you know? Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. My favorite moment was when the first time we did a party with him, I thanked him on the phone probably 3 times. And he's like, damn, slow down, Joe, calm down, Joe. Like, he literally cut me off, and I was like, thank you for doing it. But yeah, so, yeah, like you said earlier, without Frankie, there would be no house music, and he just affected so many people's lives.
Certainly. I mean, it's. I think, you know, one thing that I think sometimes people don't really realize. I mean, obviously, you know, Frankie. You kind of have these artists who are sort of pivotal players in what will ultimately become sort of this a house music scene and an actual, like, real strong dance music scene, and each person has their real sort of relevance and sort of pivotal point in this, but it's kind of like they all kind of lead to kind of Frankie, because Frankie is
It's like
sort
the
of
Kevin
like
Bacon
the.
of dance music.
Well, yeah,
All roads lead
that's
to
actually
Frankie.
genius.
It's really
All roads lead to Frankie. They do. It's like there's this, everyone kind of crosses. Well, because he sort of is he was the embodiment of all the good things about what dance music could be and how to be a gentleman in it. You know, how to be a good person. You know, he was a fierce personality. He was very kind, but he was grand.
He was grand.
He was grand. And you had to know, he would teach you.
Deservedly, though.
Yes.
No,
He
well
earned his
deserved.
job.
Well deserved. Look, we're grand. I get it, but I think what I think is, you know, he taught you how to deal with him if he really liked you and felt that genuine feeling from him. And so I would imagine, especially in your position, Rob, from having the label and having to work with him sort of as sort of the label person, sending records to someone, but then also just being a dance music fan. You were a dance music fan. You wouldn't have done your labels if you weren't a fan of dance music.
I sort of fell into it by accident in the sense that I come from Philadelphia. I came from a alternative rock and roll background. And clubbing in Philadelphia is a small affair compared to New York City. And
Right.
so coming to New York City was, at that time, what people would do to find themselves. They would leave their small towns. They would come to New York City, and they would find community. And so I found the gay community, and I found the club community, not knowing that the two were as intertwined as they are throughout history. And Frankie was one of the first people I met, and he couldn't have been kinder or sweeter, and it certainly set the tone for my experiences in
Well,
in
sort of
the
your
industry and the
entree into the business.
It was, and just to see that sort of communal experience on a dance floor, and know that it was there for you weekly, and that he would be a welcoming individual who could bring you into his house. It was the closest thing that I would liken to a religious experience from an atheist perspective.
Exactly. Where would you say? Where was the first club that you saw him at?
Would have been
so-
Sound Factory.
Sound Factory.
Yes.
Okay. So for me, it would be the World.
Yeah,
That's my real first
The
time,
World.
really seeing him play and hearing his sets. And you know, I was the odd guy that, you know, I didn't really like him when he was at Sound Factory. I loved him at Sound Factory Bar.
Yes.
I didn't
I
like him at
preferred him
Sound
at Sound
Factory.
Factory. Well, it wasn't-
It didn't. It seemed to me like it didn't fit. But I mean, a lot of people really enjoyed it. But I don't know. I didn't think that vacuous places don't really fit.
It wasn't intimate enough for
No.
Frankie
No,
it
Knuckles'
wasn't.
experience.
Right,
That
exactly.
was really what it was.
From the floor
That's
and the
why
crowd.
the owners of Sound Factory went ahead. It's why he actually said to them, like, I don't want to remain the resident here. And they wanted to work with him so badly that they literally built a room for him at Sound Factory Bar that was a smaller version of all of the best parts of Sound Factory. But from the booth, you could literally see every face that was on that dance floor from in every corner of the room. And they set that up at his request. And, you know, at the same time, it goes to show how much faith they had in him as well. I mean, you know, Sound Factory was a huge club and could hold a lot more people.
Oh, God,
so
yeah.
Sound Factory
True.
Bar was definitely taking a risk for them financially.
Yeah. It certainly paid off. I mean, it was.
In some regards, it was more successful than Sound Factory
I
itself.
think it was, and you also have to keep in mind that Sound Factory didn't sell alcohol, where Sound Factory Bar did.
Yes.
So it changed the dynamic.
Well,
that was
I
part
don't
of
know if
that
that's-
changing.
Was that true? I,
phase.
mean, I know that.
Twilo sold alcohol, but
Twilo,
Sound
when it turned
Factory
into
did.
Sound
Yes,
Factory.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Sound Factory
Fruit
did not.
juice and
Yeah.
water.
I've seen it at Red Zone 2 with David.
Yeah, those were amazing
great.
nights,
Those
because
were
that
great
was
nights.
when all those, like Allison and Limerick and
Right.
the I'll Be Your Friend and records like that were
Right.
coming
Strobe Light
out.
Honey and all
Strobe
that,
Light
all
Honey.
of those records.
Strobe
Right?
Light
Well,
Honey.
that's the beauty. That's the whole Def Mix sound. I mean, and that's something too that anyone who is interested in sort of the music of Frankie Knuckles or his work is his association with Def Mix, and having sort of David Morales as really his brother in many ways, like is they're such good friends as well as sort of musical brothers, and the work that they collectively did, as well as their work with Satoshi, their work with
Eric Hopper, too,
Eric
even,
Hopper.
yeah.
We can't leave out.
Well, I
Eric
mean, if you're
as
going to
well.
talk about Def Mix, you got to talk about Judy Weinstein too. I mean,
Of course.
really
Well,
her-
that's
it was-
Mama.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
what
know,
makes it all happen. That's
you
the
know,
queen. Yes.
You got
the
to keep in
closest
mind
thing to
that
dance music royalty.
Judy,
Yes.
Judy came from working at the Loft, working at the first record pool with David Mancuso, and then went on to partner with David Morales to form Def Mix. And then, you know, when Frankie and David met, they really had clicked and started, you know, Frankie had been off kind of, you know, in Chicago working on, you know, TR-303 drum machines. And the concept of doing a studio project, I think, was really enticing to him too. So, you know, that kind of bore their future together, really solidified their production duo. It was absolutely unparalleled.
Well, speaking of those productions, okay, I know we all kind of have our. We could probably just randomly list off about probably 35 of our probably favorite Frankie songs. So, like, you know, whether it be whether it be those things that he produced himself, or those things that he played that sort of are almost synonymous with him.
yes.
You know, outside of, they don't have to be his own productions, but you know. We'll do it. Well, we're going to go around. We'll start with Rob. So, give us two. Give us just two.
Demetria Champ, I've Had Enough.
Okay.
And Eve Gallagher, Love is the Master of Disguise.
Oh, that, you know what? And I forgot about that one. Okay, so okay. That's,
Well, you already said it. Love, Where Love Lives, his remix.
Untouchable.
And Tears, definitely.
okay, with Robert Owens.
Yes,
Of course.
exactly.
There we go.
Me definitely Tears and the Whistle song.
Oh, the whistle. How can you?
That is fantastic. And you?
Gotta call out The Pressure by the Sounds of
I
Metal.
hate you because I was just getting ready to say it. I was hoping no one would say it so I could be like, you're all horribly wrong.
And then, you know, although yes, Tears was certainly probably the seminal Frankie Knuckles record for me. I danced my senior modern dance project to that record.
Wait, in a singlet or like a bodysuit?
Capizio, yes.
Capizio bodysuit.
But I would say probably, you know, to go a little bit off the beaten path
We
with
have some
him,
footage of that.
Can we cut to that? Yeah.
We're gonna cut to that very
to
soon.
go a little off of the beaten path with him, I mean, I think that probably Inner City, What You Gonna Do With My Love, in the mix that he and David
Yep.
did together.
And see,
Goosebumps.
Just beautiful.
I would say for me, it would be A Rain Falls.
wonderful
course,
record.
as well as let's see, it's a toss-up. See, this is a tough one for me, but I would say has to be Baby Wants to Ride. I mean, that's.
yeah.
I mean, come on, because for me especially because that record, I heard that, you know, growing up as much more of a sort of punk alternative kid. I heard that record, you know, going to Danceteria and going to, you know, and going to Mud Club and things like that. You know,
Yeah.
I would hear this, but what is this song?
That track sound that was so
Yes,
sassy.
well,
out of
especially the
Chicago,
really
you know?
eerie, the eerie tracks.
But still
that they had.
organic
Very
on some
minimal.
level, like, right? Like,
Not remotely organic, but they
No.
felt, that's what was so genius about it. They weren't, but they felt that way because they were analog sounds. So it's like
Yeah.
they're
simple.
warmer.
Right,
But
They're
it was very
warm.
minimal
Very
and simple.
simple.
Yeah, they had a lot. In a weird way, not to cut you off, in a weird way, they kind of, and maybe this is just something that I think, but there's a point where some of their records are even sort of sounding along the same lines of a lot of the records that were coming out of Wax Trax. They had
Sure.
that same kind of like
Wax
that,
Trax is classic.
yeah, that gritty
yeah, but they always had that
darkness.
lush, really elegant piano.
That
you
comes,
know,
but you know what?
But
That
that's a
comes.
little bit
That
later.
comes later. That
Yeah.
actually comes later.
That's what Frankie like.
That's what he
okay,
really.
yeah.
But in his
That's when he
earlier
developed his
records,
style.
that's not so much. His earlier
Right.
records are a little grittier.
Right.
They're
Right.
reflecting more of the times.
This is just testimony to his brilliance as a producer, as a DJ, as an artist, as a friend, that he could traverse so much ground from pole to pole in a particular scene and captivate.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's funny because when I was thinking in preparation for this, it's like, well, did he have one Renaissance, two Renaissance? We were counting it. It was a never-ending Renaissance for Frankie Knuckles in a lot of ways, because as soon as he would sort of have a peak and a valley, much like his sets, and much like his remixes, which were all based on these peak and valley moments. You know, in his career, he would have these peaks and then this valley afterwards, and it would with any other artist, you would sort of say, okay, well, that was the ride, and then all of a sudden, here comes this next wave, and it's just as big, and you know, he would change his sound and change his direction, but at the same time, the soul was always in those records and in those
Every
sets.
time.
He was one of the first people that I equated the kind of success of a singer and a group to the kind of producer, right? Like you see a lot of DJs kind of hiding behind the production and or putting their face in front of the production and putting the singer kind of secondary, where he was just as on the same level. Like you heard that Sounds of Blackness record and you thought Frankie. You thought Sounds of Blackness, but you also thought Frankie. And you're like,
Well, I think
there he is.
I think that's because I'm going to let you speak because I know you wanted to say something. I didn't want to cut you off, but I think that what's beautiful about that is I think that's what happens when you live and work exceptionally and you demand high. You demand a lot from yourself and from those that you work with always, and you put all of you in everything that you do. That comes through in each thing that you do. Every Frankie record, you knew it was a Frankie record as soon as it came on. Then, as soon as it started, after that fourth beat, you're like, oh, this is a Frankie record, obviously, because it's synonymous with what he did. So I think he's as intrinsic as the artist that he was remixing or producing. Himself is in that record. So I you know what I mean? So I really feel that it's almost like he is seen equal with the artist that he's remixing or producing or whatever way he's involved with a record, with a production. So, but I will have you speak.
I was going to say his most recent work that he was working on in collaboration with Eric Kupper as producer's cut? Director's cut.
Fantastic. That's part of that renaissance that we're speaking about. This was like this was going to be another huge renaissance for him.
Stay Home with the Naya Day.
Let's Stay Home is
Let's Stay Home
is
and
a flawless piece of work.
What was the other
Hallelujah Anyway, the Candy Staten record was
Genius.
amazing.
That one. I mean, and also we're going to experience it now,
Yep.
because those were just trickling out. But it was a project that, Eric and Frankie were preparing to release as a full album project.
Exactly.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that's coming down the pipe very soon. And the other thing I was going to say is, that period of time in the kind of late 80s when you had techno and rave starting up out of the UK and coming to the US, some of these records that we're talking about were played at raves.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very different time then where music, like you were saying, Rob, crossed over into a lot of different scenes. He's touched so many people. And reflecting on after his passing, I'm amazed, sitting at the table with Clock Tower Radio, for instance, I produce many music shows and bring different hosts in, but we have them host the show. It's not just necessarily DJ sets. And I've had Alec Hanley Bemis, who's also with his, I forget the name of his label is, I forget the name of his label, but he's with like the National as well. That was his partners in the label. And he had to play the Whistle Song as a tribute in his set. And the most unusual sets that he plays for the show, and he's not a DJ, to play tribute, he felt, when he came to the studio, and I had no idea he was going to do this. And then somebody like DJ Shaky out of the Warper scene, which is, this whole scene developing on how to perform live with electronics. Right. We may think that's, in essence, maybe what a DJ does, but this is creating really live mixing or remixing. And she had this event at the Rubin where they brought a lot of Warper artists there at the Rubin Museum, and part of her set was she did this breakdown of, in her own way, of the Whistle Song. And I was just so blown away that that was the song. Yeah. I would have thought it was something more sampled from, Baby Wants to Ride, with this whole kind of new disco renaissance, or this, the new disco scene, so to speak.
Well, that's really the beauty of it all, is that of how his music and his influence still continues to happen, and it still continues to grow. It's still out there. I mean, obviously, sadly, we lost him, which was just, terrible for not just us as friends and colleagues, but for the world. I think that it meant a lot. But then the beautiful thing is that the music,
He left us with a lot of comfort.
he left us, the
Wonderful
music is
legacy.
wonderful. And I think that this is just kind of one of, this sort of round table experience is just kind of one of many that we'll have, because there's so many things to say about Frankie and all of the pioneers that were his colleagues and that were his friends, that touched our lives, that we are continuing that work. And I just want to thank you all for being here, because we have to wrap it up. I mean, I hate to leave. I love you all. You love me.
We do.
This is comfortable. I just want to live here with you.
No,
And,
and
you
I mean,
know,
as I just want to say that, I believe that, electronic dance music, EDM, whatever you want to call it, it's a gateway in its popularity and in its time right now, that I find it's the introduction for people to dig and find out more where this music comes from. And we're lucky
That is the
enough
key,
that it's
yeah.
actually had some incredible longevity without necessarily being in the forefront in this country.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Even though it had its moments a bit in the early 80s out of disco, but and some mix shows. But I think it's really a testament to, that heart that everybody puts into their music and that drive, because there isn't a lot of money or fanfare when you're starting, and there's
No,
not
there
many
isn't.
that even still get that, but it's that love and that passion that completely fuels and drives us all in this industry, even when we can't pay the bills.
Hey, you know what? I can't say it better than that. So all I will do is say thank you for joining us this evening. Thank our lovely panel. I am Craig Roseberry, your guest host. Thank you so much for watching The Artist Forum. Good night.